Get out. You're done here. Marcus's voice sliced through the thick heat of the kitchen like a whip. The clang of pans, the hiss of boiling water, even the quiet hum of the freezer. All of it stopped. Time itself paused. Every eye in the room turned, but no one moved. Jackson stood there, rigid, the sweat on his brow mixing with grease and steam that clung to his skin like shame. His hands, calloused from decades of cooking, trembled, not from fear, but from a deeper ache. Something colder, something final. Marcus stepped forward, his presence domineering and bitter. "Take off that filthy apron and don't come back." Jackson didn't speak. He didn't need to. His fingers moved slowly, methodically. He untied the stained apron from his waist, folding it with a quiet reverence, as if he were burying something sacred. The room watched in silence. A silence soaked not in respect, but in dread. No one dared to interfere. No one dared to stand with him. He placed the apron gently on the stainless steel counter, turned, and walked away. Each step echoed through the kitchen like a slow, defiant heartbeat. Just before the door closed behind him, he stopped. Without turning around, he spoke, his voice low, steady, carved from granite and resolve. "They don't know, not yet, who they just threw out of this kitchen." The door clicked shut. The silence lingered like smoke after a fire. That man was Jackson Cole, 45 years old, owner of one of the most acclaimed restaurant empires in the country, a name that graced the covers of magazines, spoken with reverence in award ceremonies. A man once called the future of fine dining, but in that moment, none of it mattered. Because success, when hollowed out by time and compromise, becomes a cage. Before the boardrooms and press conferences, Jackson had been a chef, a man of fire and steel, a man who knew how to speak through flavors, how to love through food. Cooking wasn't a job. It was his voice, his art, his soul. But somewhere along the way, the business had swallowed the passion. The deals got bigger, but his heart felt smaller. He sat now in his glass-walled office, high above the street. His name etched in gold on the door meant nothing. Not anymore. He stared at the financial reports laid out in front of him, numbers that screamed what his gut had been whispering for months. Olive Grove, his first restaurant, his heart, was bleeding. Declining revenue, mounting complaints, guests not returning, reviews slipping from glowing to lukewarm, a slow death wrapped in polite language and corporate indifference. But to Jackson, it wasn't about money. It was about loss. The kind of loss you don't measure in profit margins. He remembered the early days, the quiet music of clinking silverware, the smell of dough rising, the laughter spilling from tables. That was the olive grove he knew, the olive grove he built with blistered hands and sleepless nights. And then came a name that had begun to rot everything from within. Marcus Vance. Appointed 6 months ago, promoted too fast, the kind of man who managed with fear, not inspiration. Staff began quitting. Deliveries started disappearing. Whispers followed him like smoke. Jackson had ignored them, trusted the process, trusted the wrong man. He leaned back in his chair, pressing his fingertips together. Olive Grove wasn't just in decline. It was in danger of losing what made it real, what made it his. Enough. Jackson stood, the decision washing over him like a tide he could no longer hold back. No more emails, no more meetings, no more hiding behind numbers and suits. He crossed the office to the closet. Inside hung a row of perfectly tailored suits, his armor of power. But today, he didn't need armor. He needed memory. He reached past the silk and cashmere to pull out something older, something real, a gray hoodie, worn thin at the cuffs, a relic from his early days on the line. He pulled it over his head. The fabric didn't just cover him, it transformed him. He wasn't Jackson Cole, the empire builder. He was Jack, the chef, the worker, the man who had once bled to build something that mattered. He grabbed a cap, tugged it low. looked in the mirror. The reflection was familiar and free. "They'll never see me coming," he whispered. Outside, Olive Grove stood unchanged. Same red brick walls, same ivy tracing its edges. But to Jackson, it looked smaller now, faded, like a memory that time had eroded. He stood in front of it, unmoving. This wasn't just a restaurant. It was the soil where his roots grew, the place where he once burned with purpose, where every knife's cut, every dish served, had meant something. Now it felt colder, distant, a house without a heartbeat. He clenched his fists. He didn't need a report to tell him this place had changed. His heart already knew. He stepped forward. It was time to go home, not as its owner, but as its last chance. Inside, the kitchen buzzed with fatigue, the kind of dull motion that comes not from rhythm, but from fear. "What's your name?" The voice snapped through the haze. Jackson looked up. Marcus Vance, impeccably dressed, surgically groomed. His eyes scanned people like inventory, not souls. He saw problems, not people. "Jack," Jackson answered quietly. Marcus barely blinked. "You wash dishes?" Jackson nodded. "No background, no questions, just do the job." Marcus barked, already walking away. "Start now, don't talk, don't slow down." Jackson stood still for a beat. That's the man I trusted, no more. Around him the kitchen moved, but it didn't breathe. Staff drifted like shadows, eyes low, shoulders hunched. No laughter, no rhythm, just survival. And Jackson, no, Jack, felt it all. Not just the silence, the fear, the soul he once built, now ruled by a man who had none. And the battle to bring it back had only just begun. No greetings, no smiles, no warmth. Just hands moving fast, robotic, each gesture devoid of life. This kitchen, once the heart of Jackson's world, now felt like a ghost of what it used to be. The clatter of utensils was sharp, but the silence between people was sharper. This wasn't his kitchen. Not anymore. From the edge of the room, a familiar shape emerged. Chef Daniela. Her presence used to light up this space. Once, her hair was tied with precision, her voice carried with authority, and her steps commanded attention. Now, that fire was gone. Her hair hung loose and tired, her face drawn with sleepless lines. She didn't bark orders. She didn't inspire movement. She simply moved, quiet, aimless, another shadow among many. Jackson's eyes followed her. He remembered the fierce woman who had stood beside him when they opened Olive Grove's doors for the first time. Back then she was fearless. Today, even her footsteps seemed to apologize for existing. A cold ache gripped Jackson's chest. This wasn't just a struggling kitchen. This was a dying family, and its members were too broken to scream for help. The hot water scalded his hands, but he didn't flinch. He scrubbed plates like he was trying to erase something far deeper than food stains. The weight of metal, the sting of steam, the echo of silence, it all pressed down on him. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Every dish he washed became a window into a deeper truth. The tone in every shouted order revealed more than chaos. It revealed desperation. The hollow eyes of the staff told him what no report ever could. These weren't lazy employees. They were survivors, exhausted, abandoned. And now, he was among them. A thought whispered through his mind like a lost echo. This used to be my home. He kept scrubbing, plates, bowls, then more plates, but no amount of cleaning could purify a place that had already lost its soul. Then, Marcus's voice struck through the steam like a whip. "Short again." "Pay for it." Jackson turned slightly. A boy stood frozen near the pantry. Liam. Barely 20, skinny, shaking. He held a small crate, half empty. Flour and oil, essential supplies, were missing. I don't have that money, sir," Liam stammered, voice barely audible. Marcus stepped closer. Cold, predatory. "Then find it. I'm not covering your mistakes." Liam's head dropped, his lips quivering, but he didn't speak again. From behind the sink, Jackson watched. He said nothing, but inside, a storm gathered. That boy wasn't lying. He wasn't stealing. Jackson had seen enough desperation in his life to know the difference. Liam was scared, cornered. Marcus didn't see fear. He saw weakness. Jackson's hand curled into a tight fist beneath the hot water. This wasn't leadership. This was cruelty. And he knew. This wasn't the first crack. It was just the one loud enough to hear. After the shift, Jackson found Liam behind the building, hunched over, arms wrapped around himself. His shoulders shook and his hands were empty. Of hope, of strength, of anything that could fight back. Jackson approached silently, no judgment in his steps. He placed a small envelope beside the boy. Folded, plain, unmarked. Liam looked up, confused, eyes rimmed red. Jackson didn't look at him, just nodded once, firm, calm, and walked away. "Why?" Liam's voice cracked behind him, almost breaking. Jackson didn't turn around. No answer, no speech. It wasn't charity. It wasn't pity. It was memory. Because someone, once, had done the same for him. Later that night, from the shadows, Jackson watched the boy open the envelope. Inside, just enough cash. No note, no signature. Just what he needed to breathe. Liam looked around, searching for an answer. But the alley remained empty. Jackson whispered into the night, "Hope doesn't need to explain itself." He returned to the kitchen unnoticed, head down, hands busy. But his eyes missed nothing. At the loading dock, a delivery truck pulled in. Boxes were unloaded quickly. Too quickly. Marcus stood beside the driver, clipboard in hand, but he didn't check a single item. Just a flick of the wrist, a signature. No questions. Jackson narrowed his gaze. He knew those supplies. He built that order list with his own hands. Premium olive oils, imported cheeses, fine cuts of beef. But only half of it entered the building. The rest disappeared, like ghosts. Later, in the stockroom, Jackson reviewed the inventory sheet. Handwritten corrections, items adjusted, numbers clean, too clean. At the bottom, Marcus's signature, confident and unbothered. Jackson's chest tightened. This wasn't mismanagement. It was theft, systematic, polished, signed, and sealed. "You see it too, don't you?" A voice came from beside him. Riley. She stood at the dish station, pretending to stack trays, but her eyes were sharp and unwavering. "Supplies vanish, orders don't match, and Marcus, he doesn't care." Jackson didn't respond. He didn't need to. Riley studied his silence, then shook her head, frustrated. "Thought so. Everyone's too scared to speak." She turned and walked away, her words lingering in the air like smoke. "Something's wrong here, Jack." Very wrong. The dishes in his hands suddenly felt heavier. She was right. And someone had to prove it. That night, long after the kitchen had gone quiet, Jackson waited in the alley, cloaked in darkness and rain. The air smelled of grease and secrets. Then, Marcus appeared. Not rushed, not nervous. Just calm, confident. A man in a dark jacket met him. No words exchanged. A few boxes changed hands, the same boxes that had vanished earlier. Marcus slipped a clipboard into his coat, took an envelope in return. Money. Jackson didn't feel anger. Not yet. Only clarity. Marcus wasn't negligent. He was orchestrating this. From the shadows, Jackson whispered, "You're not just stealing from my business. You're stealing from my people." And that he would never forgive. During the next break, Jackson slipped into the storage room. It was quiet. Still. He searched quickly but with precision. Then he found it. A folder hidden behind a stack of unused menus. Inside, invoices. Neat. Too neat. Supplies marked as delivered. Full quantities, bold signatures. But Jackson knew better. He ran his finger down the list, recognizing every lie. At the bottom, Marcus's name. He folded the paper, memorized the numbers. proof. Not enough for court, but enough for truth. "Paper trails don't burn easy, Marcus," he whispered. He returned the folder. No trace. No noise. And in the corner, he heard a soft voice. "Liam." "I'm fine, Mom. I'll bring the medicine tomorrow. Just try to sleep, okay?" A pause. "No, I can't leave this job. I can't." Silence. Then, "I'll figure it out. I promise." Jackson stood still, hidden behind shelves, listening. For the first time that night, his expression shifted. His eyes narrowed, his jaw tightened. This wasn't just a frightened kid anymore. This was a son, fighting to hold his world together. Jackson looked down at his hands, scarred, strong, hands that had fought that same battle once. He closed his eyes, and a new thought settled inside him like steel. This ends with me. "I see you, kid," Jackson whispered to himself, watching from behind the shelf, even if no one else does. Then, like a shadow, he disappeared into the quiet, leaving Liam alone with his silence and a sliver of unseen hope. But peace didn't last long. "Too slow again, Daniela." Marcus's voice crashed into the room, cruel and cutting. It snapped through the kitchen like a whip, and everything stilled for a breath. Daniela froze mid-chop, her hands trembling above the cutting board, the rhythm of her work shattered. She said nothing. "I don't care how long you've been here," Marcus barked, louder now, venom rising. "Fix it or leave." Daniela didn't move. Her shoulders sagged under the weight of exhaustion and unspoken humiliation. A single tear slipped down her cheek, wiped away so fast it was almost invisible. Almost. Jackson saw it. The woman who once taught him how to balance a knife, how to slice with intention instead of speed. She was still there, buried deep under the silence. And seeing her reduced to this, something inside Jackson coiled tight. A slow, simmering fury. Not loud, not wild, but steady, focused, dangerous. Marcus turned and walked away without a second glance. Daniela didn't move. Her hands resumed chopping, her fingers automatic, but her voice, once the soul of this kitchen, was gone. "You break her spirit, Marcus," Jackson whispered internally, "and I'll break your game." That night, long after the others had left and the clamor had faded into stillness, Jackson remained. Daniela's station stood abandoned. Her knives dulled, cutting boards cracked, drawers stuck from years of neglect. No one had touched them in weeks. No one had cared. But Jackson did. In complete silence, he began to work. He scrubbed the boards until the splinters gave way to smooth grain. He sharpened every blade until it gleamed with its old confidence. He oiled the hinges of that stubborn drawer and reset every single item in its rightful place. He knew where everything belonged, not just because he built it, but because Daniela once showed him. This wasn't an act of rebellion. It wasn't to make a point. It was respect. It was a silent promise. When he was done, he stepped back, his breath slow, his heart heavy. He stared at the station, not a monument, but a memory restored. Tomorrow, when Daniela stepped into her corner of the kitchen, there would be no note, no signature, only order, only the quiet reminder that someone still believed in her, even if she didn't yet. The next day, as the shift dragged on, Marcus barked again. "Shift's not over. Stay late." His voice was void of energy, just another command, another way to keep control. Liam hesitated. Riley opened her mouth to speak, but Marcus cut her off before the first syllable escaped. "No complaints." He threw a box at them. It landed hard on the counter. Expired bread, leftover tomatoes, wilted lettuce, scraps, payment. The team said nothing, no protest, no rebellion. But Jackson saw it, the flicker in their eyes. Not fear anymore. Something colder. Numbness, defeat. He watched them gather the box like beggars instead of professionals. Riley met his eyes briefly. Sharp, tired, betrayed. Jackson didn't speak. He didn't need to. But in his chest, his heart screamed, "You can't break people like this forever, Marcus. Not while I'm here." He returned to the sink. For now, he scrubbed, he rinsed, he dried. But it wasn't the dishes he was focused on. It was the people. Liam, moving slower, soul drained. Riley, her fire dimmed, voice silenced. Daniela, hand steady, but her spirit nowhere in sight. Every single face carried the same story. Exhaustion, quiet surrender. This wasn't a kitchen anymore. It was a battlefield of survival, and Jackson, he felt it deep in his bones, not just anger, sorrow. This was his dream, now reduced to ruin. And yet, it was still his responsibility. "Look at them, Marcus," Jackson whispered in his mind. "This is what your success looks like." Marcus strutted across the kitchen like he owned the earth beneath it. He barked orders with feigned authority, ignored the weariness in every face. He thought he controlled the kitchen, but Jackson saw the truth. He scrubbed, dried, stacked. On the outside, calm. On the inside, his mind worked like fire. Proof wasn't enough. Not for these people. They needed something more than documents. They needed a moment, undeniable, unforgettable, a moment that tore the mask off. So Jackson made a decision. Let Marcus burn himself. Let him unravel in front of everyone. You want control, Marcus? Jackson thought. Then I'll let you believe you have it, until you don't. He looked at his scarred hands. Steady, capable, let's play. And in that moment, Jackson Cole ceased being a dishwasher. He became the hunter. And Marcus, already caught. He just didn't know it yet. "Boss," Jackson called out casually across the kitchen. "We're missing the truffle oil again." Every motion in the kitchen paused. Every eye lifted. Marcus turned slowly. A predator sensing challenge. "What did you say?" Jackson dried his hands on a rag, met Marcus's stare, calm, controlled. "Third delivery this week, stock still short, thought maybe you'd know." The silence afterward was thick. Marcus forced a smile, thin, cold. "Your job's dishes. Do that." Jackson nodded once, slow, deliberate. "Right, dishes." He returned to the sink, but the seed had been planted, and Marcus was already spiraling. Jackson worked slower now, not enough to be blatant, just enough to be noticed. Marcus noticed. "What's your problem?" he snapped. Jackson glanced up, expression blank. "Just backed up, missing help, remember." Marcus stepped forward. The anger was rising now, red under his skin. "Move faster or don't come back." Jackson let a plate slip from his hand. It clanged against the sink. Not broken, just loud. Enough. "Don't test me, Jack." Jackson met his stare, silent, defiant. The tension cracked the air. Marcus turned, fists clenched, breath quick. Then, "Enough!" his voice roared through the kitchen. Everyone froze, pans mid-air, knives mid-cut. Marcus stormed toward Jackson, spit flying from his rage. "You think you're smart? You think you can question me in my kitchen?" Jackson stood still, calm, collected. "I asked a question," he said. Quiet, deliberate. That's when Marcus snapped. "You're nothing here, a dishwasher, a nobody. When I say move, you move. When I say jump, you ask how high." Liam flinched. Riley's breath caught. Daniela's spoon clattered to the floor. Then, Marcus shoved him, hard. Jackson slammed into the counter, a blade sliding off a cutting board with a sharp clang against the tile. Time stopped. No one moved. Jackson lay still for a moment, then slowly stood, his breathing even, his eyes clear. No fear, just clarity. Marcus looked around and saw it, saw the eyes on him. They didn't see a leader. They saw a bully. Jackson wiped his hands on the towel, then looked Marcus dead in the eye. "You just showed them who you are." Silence. Then, Marcus screamed, "Get out! You're done! Out of my kitchen!" Jackson didn't flinch. He reached for his apron, untied it slowly, folded it neatly, once, twice, then placed it on the counter. Not for Marcus, for the team, for the witnesses. He looked at them all, Riley, Liam, Daniela, and he smiled. Not the smile of defeat, but the quiet smile of someone who had already won. He turned and walked away. Step by step. Behind him, silence hung like smoke. Riley's lips parted, but no sound came. Liam's grip on the counter was white-knuckled. Daniela stood frozen, eyes wet, unsure whether to speak or sob. The door swung shut behind Jackson, and then a different kind of silence settled. Not fear, not relief, confusion. Who was he? Why did he smile? Why did it feel like Marcus hadn't won? Jackson's footsteps faded into the distance, and inside his mind, a voice echoed. "Checkmate's coming." This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The plan was just getting started. In the stillness of his hotel room, Jackson worked. No distractions, no noise. Just focus. The desk was cluttered with evidence. Spreadsheets, invoices, photographs, delivery logs, all marked, annotated, connected. Like the kitchen, this table had become a battlefield. One where numbers were weapons and signatures became confessions. Each paper told a story of betrayal. Every false delivery, every forged document carried the same name. Marcus. Jackson's hands moved with practiced precision. His fingers, once used to slicing onions and plating perfection, now assembled the truth with the same care. A new creation. Not a dish. A reckoning. Hours slipped by unnoticed. Sleep was a luxury he no longer needed. He had built empires before from scratch. But this was more personal. He was building the case to take down the man who tried to bury his first home. When the last page clicked into place, Jackson leaned back, exhaled slow and deep. The folder in front of him was complete. Clean. Unbreakable. Tomorrow, the war would no longer be silent. Tomorrow, Marcus would answer for every lie. He tightened the strap of the folder, set it beside the door, and whispered quietly, "See you soon." Morning light warmed the red bricks of Olive Grove as Jackson returned. Not hidden, not disguised. No hoodie, no cap, just a suit, dark, sharp. The same one he wore when he first opened the doors to this place. The uniform of a man who remembered what this place meant. The clothes didn't carry power. The man inside them did. Each step across the pavement was slow, deliberate. He passed the windows. Inside, the staff glanced up, confused at first, then stunned. Someone stood, someone whispered. The door opened. Jackson Cole had come home. No more pretending, no more silence, no more shadows. This time, they would all see, and Marcus would understand, but it would be too late. The kitchen froze the moment he entered. Knives hovered mid-air. Hands paused mid-chop. Conversations died without finishing. Marcus turned, irritated by the sudden silence, until he saw him. Jackson, not the dishwasher, not the ghost in the corner. Jackson Cole, in full, in flesh. Marcus's breath hitched. His skin turned pale. Riley's hand flew to her mouth. Liam stared wide-eyed, paralyzed. Daniela dropped her spoon, voice cracking as she whispered, "It's him." The man who had stood among them for weeks. The stranger who scrubbed dishes with silent hands was the owner, and he hadn't come to play anymore. Marcus stumbled over his own breath. Who are you?" Jackson didn't blink. His voice came low, cold, final. "I'm Jackson Cole." The name struck like thunder. The air shifted. The kitchen exhaled, as if the truth had cracked open a window they hadn't known was sealed shut. Jackson stepped forward, calm as ever. "I built this place," he said, "and you tried to steal it." Marcus tried to recover, but the words slammed into the room like a verdict. Jackson laid the folder down on the counter, opened it, page by page, falsified deliveries, missing stock. Marcus's signature on every single line. Truth made visible. Proof made undeniable. Daniela picked up one paper, her fingers trembling. Her voice broke. This is Marcus's handwriting." Liam leaned in, lips parted. Riley clutched her apron, eyes locked on every damning word. "You thought no one was watching," Jackson said quietly. "But I was. And now so was everyone else." Marcus's facade shattered. "It's not what you think," he croaked. I had to. The suppliers, the margins, they—" His voice cracked. His eyes darted. Searching for allies. Finding none. "You're out of chances," Jackson said simply. The sentence didn't rise. It didn't need to. It was final. Marcus staggered, trembling, a man unraveling. He turned to the kitchen staff. No one met his eyes. Daniela stepped back. Riley looked away. Liam clenched his fists. Marcus wasn't in charge anymore. He was just exposed. 2 security guards appeared at the door, quiet, professional. "No, wait," Marcus begged, his voice frail now. "I can explain. I built this place. I kept it alive." No one moved. Jackson didn't speak. The guards took Marcus's arms. He resisted for a second, then collapsed inward, defeated. He looked to Jackson one last time, not with rage, but with regret. Then he was gone, led out, step by step, powerless, and the kitchen still, until Daniela clapped, once, then Riley, then Liam, then the others. The sound grew, not loud, not rehearsed, but real. It wasn't applause for victory. It was the sound of release, of something breaking open, of freedom returning. Liam's shoulders shook as he cried quietly, wiping his eyes with a trembling hand. Riley leaned against the wall, finally breathing again. Daniela stood taller, her spine straight for the first time in weeks. Jackson let them have it. The moment. They had earned it. "It's over," he whispered inside. Not for him, not yet, but for them. It was enough. The kitchen emptied slowly, but Jackson stayed. Alone now. No shouting, no threats. Just the hum of old machines and the smell of something unserved. He looked around. The cracks in the tiles, the burn marks on the counters, the corner where knives once clattered. His dream. Still standing, but barely. And in that silence, he finally admitted it. "I let this place break." He stayed, not because he had to, but because he couldn't leave. Not yet. The silence wasn't peace. It was grief. When the staff returned, they didn't speak. They simply watched him, waiting. No papers, no speeches, just truth. "A restaurant isn't a business," Jackson said quietly. "It's a home. It's where people grow, where food isn't profit. It's memory, it's dignity." He looked into their eyes. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that. His voice trembled, but didn't fall. "I thought growing meant winning, that more restaurants meant more success. But I left you behind." He looked at each of them. Daniela, Riley, Liam. "That ends now." No applause, no cheers. Just a silence that agreed. Jackson stepped closer to Liam, quiet, calm, then rested a hand on his shoulder. "You owe me one thing," he said gently. Liam looked up, tears still fresh. Jackson's voice came firm, yet kind. "Become the best chef in this place." I don't know how," Liam whispered. "You will," Jackson said, "because now someone will teach you." Liam broke, not in fear, not in shame, but in belief. "You're not alone anymore, kid?" He nodded, unable to speak. But he believed it. And for the first time in months, so did Jackson. Daniela reached out, her hand calloused, steady. Riley took it. No hesitation. Liam followed. 3 hands, 1 promise, no words, just truth. The kitchen still bore its scars, but it was ready to heal. Together they would rebuild it. Jackson stood back, heart heavy but full. They weren't just staff. They were family, and they weren't holding on because they were strong. They held on because they refused to fall again. A restaurant doesn't survive on profits. It lives through people, through the ones who refuse to give up. Jackson's voice came one last time. Software, not broken, not victorious. Just true. I forgot that once, he said, then paused. But not again. He turned to face the kitchen, the walls, the knives, the heat. The heart of it all. Riley stood beside him, quiet, then asked, "Why did you come back?" Jackson didn't answer right away. He looked around, at what was lost and what was found again. Then he smiled. Small, honest, to find myself. Riley nodded, silent. She didn't need to say anything. Jackson stepped forward again. Not as a boss, not as a savior. Just a man with his sleeves rolled up, ready to work. And as his story faded, theirs began.